Thank you so much for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Between January 15th and 16th, 1966, Nigeria recorded a first ever military coup d'etat, although it was recorded as failed. But of course, that was the first time it was carried out. And according to reports, rebellious soldiers led by Kaduna Nzeogu and 4 others carried out a military coup, killing 22 people, including the then Prime Minister of Nigeria, many senior politicians, senior army officers, their wives. And of course, the coup plotters attacked the cities of Kaduna, Ibadan and Lagos, while also blockading the Niger and Benue River within a 2-day time span before being overcome by loyalist forces. And joining the conversation today to take a look at 60 years after, what are some of the lessons Nigeria may have learned from that very first experience. We have a journalist and political affairs analyst, Adewale Adeoye. Thank you for being here on the program today. Right, Mr. Adeoye, let's quickly take a look at, this happened 60 years ago. And according to reports, at the end of the day, that incident was recorded as a failed coup d'etat, even though about 5 people had planned this particular coup. And looking at the antecedents of the military in Nigeria and how far we've come, if we look at what happened during that particular incident and the fact that, it was the coupists were later taken out, the conspiracy theory of coup plotting in Nigeria, what could you make of, governance at that particular point in time? Why, some people had thought it's necessary to overcome the government of the day?
Well, I think for us to understand the 1966 coup, we have to look at the primary and then the secondary causes that led to that coup. I think the primary cause has to do with the nature and composition of Nigeria itself. It has to do with our history. We should not forget that before the British came in 1865, we had great empires. We had people who ran their own economy. We had, like Oyo Empire, we had the
Benin Empire,
right, that covered the whole of Middle Belt of today. Kwarafa was actually a confederation, made up of TV, other ethnic groups, and they ran their own political economy. And now the British came and said, okay, we want to merge you together to form one country in 1914. But there's nothing bad in people coming together to form a bigger country. But we were robbed of the culture of debate. We were robbed the opportunity to negotiate among ourselves. We were robbed the opportunity to debate the kind of country that we wanted.
Okay.
So that country was put together just to meet the interests of the British Empire.
Right.
And
not getting the input of the people directly involved. Okay.
So all the various conferences we had since 1922 were basically organized for British interests. Even where people were allowed to come together to debate, those people were selected by the colonial masters. So that problem was there. We had a country that was made up of over 200 ethnic groups that never had any opportunity to debate how it wanted to live together.
Right.
And the little opportunity that we had to debate the future of the country, people expressed resentment against having a country where all the ethnic groups will be brought together under one constitution.
Right.
That to the extent that in 1957 or 58, that there was a meeting in Lancaster House where Awolowo, representing the Yoruba people, said there should be secession clause in the proposed 1960 constitution.
Right.
That means if you don't want to be part of Nigeria,
you can leave.
You can decide to leave. And people started to accuse him of tribalism, but he was saying the truth. And don't also forget that before that coup, we had ethnic associations. In fact, the first one was Ibibio Union, which was established in 1928. Then later we had the TV Union. Then we had the Igbo Federal Union. Before Afenifere was established in 1945, those groups are already there. So we had a country where the seed of suspicion was already planted.
There. Okay.
And when the British people were going, they called everyone together. And they had the Wellington Commission. And people expressed fear that this country we're having are not sure that we are going to have peace and justice.
Right.
So in 1960, you know, that played out, which now led to the secondary cause of that coup, when they were attempting to impose Akintola on Southwest, even though Awolowo was the most popular. Right. In collaboration between the North and the Southeast, they wanted to impose their own candidate, and people revolted, which led to the imposition of emergency rule on the people of the Southwest. And the soldiers used that one as an opportunity to now stage their coup. So I think those are the factors that
leading up to the January 15 coup. But then to also some you know, historians and people who've also weighed in on this, they've also since we've traced, you know, the history up onto what actually could have led to the coup of January 15. Others also said it could have been a reaction of corruption and governance failure of the First Republic. Do you also share in that sentiment?
Well, you know, the coup plotters will look for an opportunity to, you know, to stake their coup.
Right.
So corruption has always been there, you know, and it was an opportunity for them to find that as the reason why they had to, you know, stake their coup. But even then, I think if we never had the 1966 coup, Nigeria would have been a greater country, because we'll have had regions, Southwest,
Southeast,
you know, Southeast,
South.
and then the North. That the British people left, that each region was developing at its own pace. You know, Yoruba, I mean, Southwest, for instance, had, you know, the Western House in London. If you want to travel abroad, there is an envoy, you know, that was representing the Southwest. The East also the same thing. Right. And if you look at what the region achieved in those days, within 8 years of Awolowo's rule, building the University of Ife, you know, building Odua investment,
the House,
you know, the tallest building in West Africa, the Western Nigerian television station.
Right, Western
Since
education.
1960, you know, there is no state that has been able to build another university, for instance, better than University of Ife. No stadium better than the one built by Awolowo at Ibadan. So they have not even, what they achieved in 8 years, no, all the Southwest states put together, they have not been able to achieve it in 60 years. That is the truth. So I think that coup was unnecessary. Okay. You know, and you know, it was based on ego. You know, people want to settle ethnic, even though we are trying to cover up, you know, to come with all sort of sentiment. It was essentially an Igbo coup. Right. People are trying to say, oh no, look at all the list of the planners. Right. Only one person came from the Southwest. And even when you look at the execution, the Senate president at that time was Nwafo Orizu. And he made a statement after that coup, handing over power to Aguiyi-Ironsi, who was not actually part of the coup. So, and you had the state president who have taken over that leadership. And when you look at the sectional killings, you know, the killing in the North, the killing in the Southwest. So basically it was a sectional coup. Right. So we cannot run away from that fact. And I think that, you know, the counter coup led by, you know, the Northern people, you could see that they also targeted those that came from the Southeast, to the extent that they haven't had to go to the prison. Those that were detained in the prison in Benin and killed them. In Abeokuta, they went to the prison and killed, you know, the Igbo officers there. So it was basically an ethnic group. And I think that Decree 34 of 1966 messed up the whole thing, which was introduced by Aguiyi-Ironsi to now match all the regions together, bringing Nigeria under a unitary system. I'm glad you went into that particular situation, because I was going to ask, after power was handed over to Major Aguiyi-Ironsi, or Major General Aguiyi-Ironsi, others also said that perhaps that's did not do much by stabilizing the country, because rather than bringing together, or rather than digging through the cause of why the coup plotters may have struck in the first place, it was more or less like it's worsened the existing division of the country further. In your own opinion, him taking over power, or power being handed over to him at that particular point in time, what perhaps could he have done differently to have, you know, again, given a facelift or a soothing experience to the agitators at that particular point in time? Well, in the first place, we can say that there were two coups, you know, on January 15, 1966. The one originally planned by Nzago and Anoforo,
and
you know, Captain Obi, Captain Obiena, and many of them like that. And then the coup, the counter coup of Aguiyi-Ironsi, which came out of the statement made by the then Senate president that he was handing over power to the military, his own king's person. And I think that he arrested some 30 officers, you know, and the majority of, I think we had only about 4 Yoruba people among those officers that were detained, you know. So the majority of those that were detained were of Eastern origin. Only 4 people were from the Southwest. I think one Ganiyu Adeleke, Olafimi, then Ademulegu and one other person who were from the Southwest. And I felt that if people had planned a coup, the normal thing is treason. That's the highest form of punishment.
Right.
We will have set up a panel and then investigate. But it's like he was trying to treat them with kid gloves. You know, they were never, for 6 months, nothing happened to them. So, and I think people felt that, look, this is actually an ethnic government that was designed to ensure the hegemony of a particular tribe in the country, to impose its hegemony over the other parts of the country. And what made that matter was that decree, unification decree, that brought everybody together. The civil service was merged, the culture, the heritage, the constitution, everything was merged under one country.
Right.
So I think that Aguiyi didn't do well, and of course that was what led to the revolt of the coup, counter coup of July 1966, which was led by Danjuma and, you know, majority of them of northern extraction to. But this, why coming to power, instead of them to annul that decree, unification decree, they retained it and also brought their own hegemony to which was imposed on Nigeria. And for 27 years, we suffered that cruel manipulation in the hand of people who felt that, look, we have taken over power from people in the Southeast, so it is now our turn to use that same weapon
to get it back.
To rule Nigeria.
So a while ago, you did say that perhaps this was ethnically driven by a set of people, but for some, they will say that rather than that, it was more or less like ideologically motivated, because again, according to the educated military January boys, like they called them at that particular point in time, there were issues they saw more as a universal or a countrywide issue that they wanted to correct, and so for them, it was more of ideology than ethnicity. I'll just like for us to again step up on that, because earlier you had said more or less it could have been as ethnically motivated. Yeah.
Well, you know, when you have a coup, there are different tendencies. For instance, Ade Moyega, in his own opinion, you know, it was a radical good revolutionary coup.
Right.
But it was just one, you know, out of about 8 officers. So it was, to me, it was in the second layer. But the core group, you know, made up of Kaduna Zogo,
right,
and you know, Ife Ajuna, you know, and then Owategu, and many of them like that. For me, I think it was, you know, actually for a different agenda.
Okay.
So Ademoyega may not understand.
Ademolegu?
Yes. Okay. No, Ademoyega. Okay. You know, Ademolegu was the one that was killed.
That was killed.
He must also understand why, I mean, the motivating factor, the hidden agenda of a certain cell inside that group. Some of them may have a revolutionary idea like in Zogo, but that does not mean that the other people that were his comrades had the same agenda. For instance, look at what happened in Kaduna. After Zogo led the attack on Amadou Bello, killing him and his wife, there was a certain sergeant, Daramola Adegoke. He was also killed. You know, and Zogo was a military instructor, you know, in the Nigerian defense school, and he organized 2 nights of training. You know, he said he wanted to teach them modern techniques in warfare. Nobody knew that he was planning a coup. Right. So he kept that in only to himself and to a few people who also belong to his ethnic origin. Right. And then look at what happened in Lagos. Ife Ajuna was supposed to handle Lagos, to kill, you know, Balewa and some other people. And then Nwobusi was supposed to kill supposed to kill some other politicians.
We have Michael Opara and to kill.
But they allowed them to, you know, to escape. So, and then how do you explain that? Even those that are supposed to arrest Aguiyi, they never did. Right. Then they went after Ademolegun, you know, Samuel Ademolegun, and killed him. You know, so you can imagine that kind of killed him and his wife. They did the same thing also to Amadou Bello. And then in Ibadan, they killed Akintola. Yes. You know, later, you know, after. So when you look at all these things, you ask yourself, why is it that those that were killed, only one Igbo person, which was by accident,
was killed in the whole
thing? So I mean, you leave us with the impression that it was motivated. And of course, we have no other problem with that, because Nigeria is a country where you have ethnic contest.
Right.
So if that was the way they felt they could resolve their own, well,
then
good.
It was good.
So, but for us to deny that reality, I think it's not. We are not being honest with history.
Right. Let's quickly go to the failure of the coup. And it was reported that the plotters had planned to neutralize key government and military figures, as well as assist the cities of Kaduna, Ibadan, and Lagos, which were major seats of power and government. But on the morning of January 15, of course, that didn't happen. For them, Nzeogo was surprised because he had expected a radio broadcast from Lagos, which of course didn't happen because of other issues. And of course, he already drafted a speech which was broadcast on Radio Kaduna around 12 a.m., which he declared martial law over the northern province of Nigeria. Looking at that radio declaration and you declaring, martial law over northern provinces of Nigeria, when we know that we have other provinces, was that also a ploy to take over just one part of the country and allow other parts to remain ungoverned? Or at that particular point in time, what was it all about that, it was more or less particular about the northern province, because that was where, of course, he was detailed to have carried out the act? Yeah,
I think there were unexpected consequences. When he made that announcement in Kaduna, in first division, he did not, perceive the failure of that coup.
Right.
In
Lagos and other parts.
And we should ask ourselves, why did that coup fail in Lagos? We had three most important in the top channel of the army. We had my Malari, then we had Ademulegun, and then Agunyorosi. So for me, I think there was, we don't know what happened.
There were records that they failed to neutralize Agunyorosi in Lagos.
He was supposed to have been arrested, but they never did. Right. So eventually, the Senate president handed over to him. To Agunyorosi.
Could that had also been a sort of negotiation?
Yes. So that's why I'm saying that. Even while Kaduna was planning, Kaduna Zongo was planning that coup, there were other people
that were also manipulating.
That were also doing a lot of manipulation unknown to him.
Right.
So he felt embarrassed that, look, what is happening in Lagos? And I think that sabotage, before he knew what was happening, many of them have been arrested, and then Agunyorosi proclaimed himself as the president of the country. So, and I believe that, the lesson we should learn is that it's always good to resolve issues amicably, in a democratic manner, because eventually Agunyorosi also paid with his own life. There was a counter coup, and then eventually, and I think the country is suffering from that, the consequences of that coup even up to now. Because for 27 years, we had military rule, and what did they do? They used every opportunity to settle, ethnic scores. Look at the establishment of sensitive military institutions all over the country. Majority of them, that were established under 27 years of military rule. Why, put in the north. In Kaduna alone, we have almost about 9 military institutions. Right. Tradoc is in Mina. Amokol is in Bauchi, NDA is in Kaduna, the Nigerian military school is in Zaria, the Air Force school is in Kaduna, the school of police is in Kaduna. So aviation you don't have anyone in the southwest, and all the successful coups we have had since 1966 have always been led by people from the north. The only one that we had that was led by ethnic minorities like Gideon Okaku never succeeded. Right. So, the North took advantage of what happened in 1960s to secure power on its own side. Right. And I think these are some of the fundamental challenges we're having to. And it's not just about establishment of military institutions, even creation of states in their favor, creation of local governments in their favor, creation of wards, political wars and all that, everything in their own favor. Right. So when you are talking about power shift and all that, it's part of the reasons why they are resisting, because they felt that, look, we have inherited power since 1960 and then we have to keep to it, but which at the end of the day will backfire and will affect stability and peace of the country.
Did that military coup have any sort of effect on what we're still seeing today, especially looking at the political history of Nigeria? That first coup of 1966, can we trace back to that coup and allude some of the political issues we're having today to that particular coup?
Well, the major factor to me, was the national question, the ethnic question. Okay. How do we live together as Igbo, as Yoruba, as Hausa? How do we establish security institutions that people will have confidence in it? How do we establish military institutions that people will have confidence in it? How do we set up political parties that will command the respect and confidence of all the ethnic groups in Nigeria?
Right.
And that's why people are talking about sovereign national conference. We have never had that opportunity to sit down and talk. And also the need for us to decentralize power. Because as long as the president of the country can determine life and death, then every ethnic group will almost kill itself to make sure that it grabs that power. So there's a need for us to look at the recommendations of Awolowo, which was talking about federalism, that the center should be weak, and then we have stronger, especially in the multiple multi-plural ethnic society like Nigeria. So it's a major question, and I think up to now we are yet to address it. Look at President Tinubu. He has spent just less than 4 years. People in some parts of the north are always, we can't wait. We can't, it's too much. This we have to take over power. Because
is it a birthright?
Yeah, because they think that, look, this power is because the center is so powerful. That's why they are scrambling to ensure that they grab it. And if you look at who has ruled Nigeria since 1960, the north has ruled for almost twice. The period of time that we have had either military or civilian. So we need to have a weaker center and then stronger regions, and I think that would be a better format for Nigeria.
When we started this conversation, and in looking at what those young January officers alluded to, why they state that corruption was one of the reasons they gave, and when you were going to respond, you said corruption has always been there.
Yeah.
Till today, we're still dealing with issues around corruption, meaning that, this particular issue has always been there, and we have not been able to confront issues around corruption. You've also alluded to the fact that there's the need to have a weaker center and give more power to the state and the region. If we're still confronting these issues 60 years after the first coup, is there a likelihood that we will find solutions to issues around corruption and giving more powers, taking power away from the center?
Yeah, let me first of all say that the act of even junior officers, planning coup, a sectional coup, killing people from particular area and leaving your own people, itself is the worst form of corruption. Because it's a betrayal of trust of the people. You left some people, who are your own people, then you decided to kill the most prominent leaders, that people will never forget. So that one itself, you cannot use corruption to fight. That's political corruption. Okay. So it wasn't an excuse at all for them. And even when Aguirre came in for the 6 months that he ruled the country, I was saying that there was no corruption. When people were being, bringing people from your own area to take over certain positions and all that. So I think that it's not an excuse to say that because the government is corrupt, then we have to kill the people there, we have to overthrow them in a violent manner. Why we don't support corruption, but I think that there are democratic ways of resolving contradictions, even if those contradictions have to do with corruption and stealing and all that. Why we advise politicians to be very mindful of how they rule the country, because it can lead to revolt. We must never advocate for a violent overthrow of any democratic government. It may take a long time, but I think that democratic procedures are always the best. When you're talking about America, Britain, they have passed through these processes. They have seen a lot of things, corruption, decay, but they were able to strengthen their laws, strengthen their democratic institutions, create anti-corruption agencies, and within a long period of time, we discover that this system will be able to regenerate itself and then to create a better system, than what they had in the past years. So we should have trust in democratic process. And I believe Nigeria will be moving slow, but we are not moving backward. So we should allow democratic means of resolving the issues that we have. If you had not had a coup, Nigeria would have been a better country. Look at India. Since 1948, they have their own challenges. Look at countries like Brazil. Look at countries like China after the revolution in 1949. I mean, China has emerged as a world power. The same thing with India. So we need to learn to look at even South Africa. We had apartheid and all that, but they were able to resolve that apartheid in a democratic way, even though there are pockets of violence and all that. At the same time, at the end of the day, they came to a round table. So I believe that the challenges we have in this country, should not be necessarily be resolved through the barrel of the gun. We should continue to engage ourselves and exploit democratic institutions and opportunities to deal with those challenges that we have.
Okay, so looking at the outcome of that 1966 coup, Also, history put it that the plotters, though kept in jail, were never court-martialed, and according to military procedure. But again, we know that other occasions, especially field coups, we can, give example under President Olusegun Obasanjo, where Dimka and other mutineers were killed by a firing squad, and also Maman Vasta and a couple of others. And so if we're learning lessons from the past and in a view to move forward in the future, that particular coup d'etat though failed and the plotters were never properly punished. Is that also a pointer to the fact that sometimes antecedent always also have a way in history? Yeah.
I think if Aguiyi had the way I arrested those officers, if you had court-martialed them, and if I set up a military tribunal to try them, and then apply Nigeria, I think there would have been, people, the northern people that plan a counter coup would not have taken that step. But they waited for 6 months. Nothing happened. Even though it's not justified, it turned out to be a calamity for all of us in the country. But I think that he gave them that advantage for 6 months waiting and nothing happened. You can imagine that, killing somebody like Awolowo, Amadu Bello, to the average northerner, was their own Awolowo. Was a charismatic leader. Was somebody that, the most respected leader in northern Nigeria. So there's no way you kill such a person with his wife, and then you expect them to go to sleep. So I think Aguiyi did not handle that situation very well, and that was what prompted the counter coup of July. That led to his death, and since then, Nigeria has been, we have been repaying one evil with the other. People trying to stage coup to counter. And it has been extended to the frontiers of politics. That people set up political parties to further ethnic interests. They think that, look, if they are not, if it's only if they are there that their ethnic interests can be better protected. And I think we need to shift to this. We need to shift from this kind of mindset to be the country where everyone will have the right to contest for election wherever you come from. Because when we talk about presidency, everybody is talking about Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo. Nobody is talking about Shekiri person. Nobody is talking about TV person. Nobody is talking about so many other people like that. And their own interests also matter. So we need to be the country where people can contest on their own merit. And I think one way we can do that is to decentralize the center. Let that center be least attractive to Nigerians. Let us each person focus on the region where people can have the right to express their values, their culture, their heritage. Instead of everybody rushing to Abuja, you want to set up a country, you have to go to Abuja. Police, you have to go to Abuja. You have to send a police DPO to come and protect my local government in my state, in Ondo or Ekiti state. So we need to decentralize the country so that people can,
develop their own region at that pace.
It's going to minimize this conflict that we're having all over the country. So
the retaliatory coup, of course, which later led to the death of Aguiyi himself, of course, it was said that that particular one was led by northern soldiers, and of course that led to the death of many Igbo soldiers and civilians, which eventually led to the civil war. If we take a look at what happened during the retaliatory coup, which eventually led to the civil war, are there lessons really that Nigerian leaders, judging from history at that particular point in time, can learn, or do we really put things in the best perspective for our leaders to learn from past mistakes?
Well, let me say that people can learn from mistakes if they develop the habit to read about history. At the risk of being immodest, most of our leaders don't read. I wanted to come here with a copy of the Willis Commission report. Though maybe next time in future we'll bring it. I can assure you many of our legislators have not read that report. Many of our governors have not read that report. So many of them have even actually not read about the coup. A leader must be able to have a versatile knowledge of his own history,
with the past,
so that you can learn from it. And of course, you cannot compare what you have now today compare with what used to happen in the days of Awo. In the days of Awo, we organized what we used to call summer school at Ibadan. All their leaders will go there. They will stay there for weeks. They will teach them about the history of the country. They will teach them about coups, about constitution, about discipline, about party organization, you will be there for weeks, and at the end of the day, you have a certificate. So you will have a lot of resource persons, professors who will come and interact with you and give you knowledge, because knowledge is power. Right. But today, I don't think our politicians are interested in the quality of those that lead us, the level of their intelligence. It's one thing for you to have first class in law and all that, but in terms of understanding your environment, in terms of understanding your political environment, what led to certain things in the past, many of our leaders are bereft of the ideas of history. So that's why they continuously make mistakes. Because if you have read about what has happened in Nigeria, you'll be very careful. And if you make it part of your curriculum, that if you want to become a governor, if you want to become a minister, you will learn about certain things. You have, lectures, seminars, workshops to teach you. That's why institutions in UK, Britain are very strong. Right. As senators, the places, there are schools you need to pass through. And the training is continuous. Look at, and this thing has split over into traditional institutions. You see a lot of our traditional rulers today who don't have a sense of history. I had an interview with the former Alaafin of Oyo, Obadeyemi, extensive interview. Do you know that at a point he started reading the speech delivered by Azikiwe as the president of Nigeria? He said 2000 and something was. He read from beginning offhand without looking at anything. Read from the beginning to the end. That's a king. He will quote what happened in 1632. He will not look at any book. The crisis in Ilorin, the one activity. This man had everything on his head. Right. But how many traditional rulers today even understand the history of their own town? Without a sense of history, you cannot talk about developing your people. You cannot talk about even correcting mistakes of the past. Right. So I think that's a major problem. That most of our leaders today, and that's why they keep on repeating errors. Mistakes. This mistake.
So you've identified the facts that we cannot correct mistakes of the past if we do not even know some of those mistakes, if we cannot identify some of those mistakes. Here we are talking about what happened 60 years ago and some of the lessons we can learn going forward. We know that especially on the continent, the African continent, a couple of countries at the moment are being governed or are being ruled by the military, and the first thing that they always allude to is misgovernance, corruption, and all of those things. We know that somehow we've been quite lucky here in Nigeria, but what are some of the things our political elites, our leaders need to start taking cognizance of, just so that we're sure that democracy will continue to thrive in Nigeria?
I think one of the major things we need to address is distribution of wealth. As long as there is a wide gap between the rich and the poor, the rich can never sleep well. You see, we are talking about terrorism in the north and all that, but do you know that it started somewhere? Good leaders will have seen it 30 years earlier. Right. That look, let's address this problem. I will also that problem. That was why I introduced free and compulsory education as far back as 1952. And it took effect in 1954. Today, go around our southwest state, you see a lot of area boys on the streets, even in rural areas, our money layer and all that. And all. The day these people begin to raise the question of power, that is where we are going to be in trouble. It's a keg of powder. That is explode at any time. So, but look, a friend of mine who is in the US, he said, we were just talking, he said, look, that in the US, your child, the car will come and bring your child from home, wherever your child lives, at the expense of the government, and take their child to school, and then return that child
to you.
If government can do that for me, I can die for that government. Just take my child to school and bring my child. Right. The house people go to, just taking your child to school and bringing back your child every day. And then they provide meal. In US, in Israel, in Singapore, that's what governments do. Right. Give children food, take them to school, bring them back. You know what that means? You're securing their future. You also address education, so that everyone has access to education. That is where you will be able to develop talents, to discover talents. If Elon Musk are not gone to a little school, will people have been able to discover his talents? So we have to know that stability, prosperity for the rich and the poor can only come if there is redistribution of wealth, and then access to justice. When people don't have access to justice, if the judiciary is corrupt, if I know that somebody has stolen my car, I don't have anybody to go and complain to. Right. If I know that somebody has beaten my wife, I cannot control, I cannot go and report to police. Then I will take law into my hand. People will go and form courts. They will go and form violent organizations to be able to use such institutions as a means of seeking justice. So when somebody has taken over your land, you go and carry him and kill him because you have a corrupt judicial system. So we need to strengthen our judiciary to be able to give access to justice to the poor people. So that they can. Then you also need to deal with distribution of wealth. If somebody has several acres of land, thousands of acres, and people don't have just one plot of land, no housing, no food, no education, then it's a matter of time. We will not be able to sustain democratic governance. It's either you have violence like we're having in the north, or anything can happen, which can also include a military coup, even though we don't need such a thing to happen. But we must not create conditions for things that can destabilize democracy.
Right. As we wrap up this conversation today, looking back at what happened in 1966, was that coup a tragic interruption of democracy or a symptom of deeper structural failures?
I think they are both. I think they are both. You know, it was violent assault on the country's democratic process. Nigeria was just about 6 years old at that time in terms of democratic. So I think if Nigeria, you look at countries that have been having one coup over one after the other, they are never stable. They never progress. Look at Singapore since 1965. That when Singapore left Malaysia, they had a lot of problems, challenges, corruption, and all that, but they were able to resolve those problems, you know, through democratic means. However, you cannot talk about democracy when the votes of people or the people don't count. We need to appeal to our politicians, you know, because it will backfire. If at the end of the day, it's only you are the son of a rich man that you can contest for local government chairman. It's only when you are close to the governor that you can become councillor. If that system will collapse, they will not listen. It will collapse. Have a level fair, a playing field where the son of a hunter, the son of a can also, because it doesn't mean that we from poor who don't have knowledge. But in Nigeria today, if you are not the son of a big man, you cannot go to the House of Assembly, you cannot go to the Senate. So there is a kind of resentment, cold resentment. That's why people don't turn out when it's time to vote. So it means that democracy itself is in trouble. When you have a situation where about 1 million people are supposed to register to vote and only 50,000 come and vote, then they have allowed you to do things the way you want, and what you are having is peace of the graveyard. It's only a matter of time that is going to lead to, it's going to explode. So the democratic system must be, reformed. You don't have to be giving rights to people for them to vote for you, because that's, you are already buying their future, you are buying their conscience, and once that is done, you have lost your legitimacy. You are not different from a military dictator, because you are able to manipulate yourself to come to power. So if we want Nigeria to be great, if we want the Southwest Yoruba land to be great, we must address these fundamental problems. We must read the history of other countries that are great. Do we want to be a great country, or want to be a stunted country? You want to be great, prosperous, where as a rich man, the governor can go to a Ikeja and people will be clapping and hailing him, shaking his hands like it happens in Europe. Then you must reform the system. It's not a system that only guarantee your safety, then you hide inside bulletproof. You cannot go out and you claim to be leading people that you cannot go and shake their hands on the streets. So we need to build a system that is, that people have confidence in, that people trust, that people can defend, people can lay down their lives to protect that system. On
a closing note this morning, what again would be your thoughts for the military, especially in their role as to protecting the country, and maybe take, turn a blind eye to issues around governance?
The military, the profession, trained to fight external aggression. The core role of the military is what the military should focus on. Military, brigadiers, major, they don't have business with governance. If you want to participate in politics, leave the military, resign, and then join politics. Politics, is meant for, right from ages, even in the Oyo Empire, soldiers are not the ones running the state. They go to war. Are lives very far from the main town. He goes to war. Why the business of the Commonwealth is left for civilians who have been schooled in the art of governance, who can deal with issues of environment, issues of security, issues of politics, issues of economy.
Right.
So the military should never dream, if they have any, in fact, they should not dream of coming to power again. And I think I hope no soldier will make the mistake of thinking that because soldiers have staged coup in the past, they can stage coup again. Any coup at this time will lead to violent resistance by Nigerians.
All right. Thank you so much, Adewale Adeoye, for weighing in on this conversation today. And we've been talking about Nigeria's first coup 60 years after. We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
This morning. Well, the conversation today has centered around Nigeria's first coup and 60 years after, and we'll be closing today by saying, I mean, it's been 60 years, and Nigeria's story reminds us that democracy is not self-sustaining. It must be defended, strengthened, and constantly renewed, and this conversation must continue. Thank you so much for watching this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, Adebinkwe will be here to take you through her Lagos conversation.